What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Single Player Experience Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sebastian Mauldin, and joining me today is a all-star, a certified all-star. I'm excited about this episode. Before I introduce my guest, though, I wanted to talk about what we'll be talking about today. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a lot of cool games that we're looking forward to. We're going to be diving deep into some of the games and hardware that we're thinking about making gaming investments in, and we're going to be talking about what we've been playing lately. And I'm going to put David to the test here, ladies and gentlemen. He's a little bit nervous, but he shouldn't be. Everybody, we're going to do that right after the intro. DJ, hit the intro, Matt.
Round one, fight.
And that's the bottom line.
And his kick is good.
I need a weapon.
This is over.
You cannot escape.
You forget 1,000 things every day. How about you make sure this is one of them?
Here we go.
It's time for the main event.
All right, and we're back. So, my guest today, like I said in the intro, he's a rock star. This dude is absolutely amazing. Not only as a gamer, but as a human being. My guest today has done it all in a lot of different ways. Like, he's made the rounds in gaming. He's a writer, he's an editor, he's also, done a lot of video editing, evidently, from what I'm hearing before we hit record. He's the editor-in-chief at Boss Rush Network. He's formerly of Zelda Dungeon. He's been a writer at the Mighty site. He's a freelance certified editor as well. Northwest Editors Guild, a part of that. And this dude is, I'm just going to put it out here, one of the most prolific Zelda players out there. Absolutely out there. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is the one, the only David Lazby. David, how you doing today?
Well, good. Thanks so much. That's quite the introduction. I appreciate that.
David, man. So before we begin, though, like 2025 is, we're just kicking off the year. How do you feel about this year so far?
Well, I'm kind of optimistic. We got a lot of good stuff on the horizon in the gaming world at any rate. I don't know so much about the real world, but gaming is a great place to escape, and, there's a lot of stuff I'm looking forward to. I'm enjoying this generation of consoles, but also really excited about the possibilities of what's coming out. And personally, I've expanded my sort of gaming sphere a little bit I got a MetaQuest 3 this last fall in preparation of some games and starting to appreciate the VR space as well. So I'm excited to see what happens this year.
All right. Let's dive into it. I want to ask you, though, before we get into what I think is going to be topic of the show, and that is like the investments we're going to be making. I want to ask you a simple question. Tell me if you could see this. And 3, 2, 1, here we go. The simple question I want to ask you, David, is what have you been playing? Are you obsessed with it, or it's just all right? So what have you been playing lately?
Oh man, that's awesome. And the Halo music gives
love
me
it.
chills.
Yeah.
Well, I've been trying to play a lot. I'm always trying to do something on my Switch and Xbox, at the same time. Those are my two primary consoles, and kind of gives me some options. But lately, I've been playing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and I'm obsessed. I just finally wrapped that up yesterday. Just about 100% of the game. There's a few things that I'll probably come back to later, but I did not expect to love that game as much as I did. Some people, like I was talking to Ed over at Boss Rush here, and he was not a fan of the first person perspective. Like he couldn't do it. He's like, he played it, he put it down, he was done. But I love it. I grew up watching Indiana Jones, but it's been a while since I watched the films, and playing the game, I immediately went and rewatched the films with my kids. And I truly obsessed. I bought an Indiana Jones book to read. I just went in all in. And the game really feels like you're playing in the movies. And, they kind of use the whip in a lot of ways, like the hook shot in Zelda, so you kind of just become seamlessly part of your adventure. And, there's lots of classic Indiana Jones Nazi punching, and I can't say enough. The thing that really I'm almost excited for is for it to come out on PlayStation, just so that other people can appreciate how good the game is, because I don't think enough people are talking about it right now, just because it's locked away on, I hate to say it, but kind of a dead console right now with Xbox.
Wow.
Which, I mean, from Seattle, I'm a huge Xbox fan, but they haven't done it, and Bethesda hasn't really made much noise.
No,
So it's great to see this game be as good as it is.
I'm right there with you. Like, so I'm of two ilks with Indiana Jones. Like, I think like a part of me has no nostalgia for it because like I didn't watch the movies until later in life, and by that time I think I was unfortunately converted to the Mummy movies. For me, it was harder going backwards to Indiana Jones, and I mean backwards as far as like, cinematically. I'm not saying like obviously Indiana Jones is the more beloved franchise, but
Sure,
it
like Brendan Fraser in the Mummy, right? Like,
yeah, for sure, Brendan Fraser's
yeah,
version. Yeah,
okay, yeah. Oh man,
yeah. I'm not even counting the third movie. I like to believe that one doesn't exist, but like the first two are so funny and beloved to me, like to where like those were like kind of like my Indiana Jones because I was born in '91, so I'm like those, and it wasn't until later in life that I actually discovered Indiana Jones and actually watched the first trilogy, and so I'm like it was kind of like that was kind of jarring for me, and then like on the other side of the fence, like I like the game, but don't love it for some reason. It's like it's not the first person view because I'm like I can play Skyrim, I can play other games like that. So the viewpoint doesn't necessarily turn me away. I think it's like some of the mechanics aren't necessarily clicking with me. Is like I don't like the stealth at all, if I'm being honest. It feels like there's a lot of like entry things to stealth that I don't like. Like it feels like it's too simplistic. And the fact that I hit this dude in the banjo and the dude in front of him didn't notice that the guy fell with the banjo he hit. It was like loud. Nothing happened. So I do feel like I feel like I got a little tired as the game went on of the whip and the just straight melee like punches. Because I'm like, as the game, like I currently right now, I plan on finishing this weekend, but like right now so I did the light teleportation part, and I went to the war zone in Asia. Like where
Mhm.
like all that kind of stuff is happening. Then after that, I went to correct me, please, because I can't remember the exact location. It was the Amazon.
So you go to Peru and you go to
The
Thailand. You
boat.
go to the boat. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's the
The boats.
Sukhothai.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
so I'm right now exploring in the boat where that's more of the core feature, almost like God of War is like where you're
Mhm.
doing the boats in the water. So I'm exploring the areas around that. So that's where I'm at. How much longer do I have to go?
Not much longer.
Okay.
After that, you kind of go into this like kind of rush to the end of the game.
Okay.
It'll like that's like the last major area to explore.
Okay. Okay. So I'm like I like a lot of it. I don't necessarily love a lot of it either. So I'm sort of like middle of the road sort of feeling of it. I love the
Yeah.
presentation though. Love that part.
Well, I totally get what you're saying about the stealth part. I think this is a really interesting thing that you brought up because I think for me growing up on the films, there was always a sort of campy element to it of
Yeah.
like, absurd action sequences that like, probably wouldn't work out well for a hero, in real life, and so hitting a guy over the head with a banjo and the guy didn't hear it in front of him, that just sort of fell in line with that campiness to me. But I could totally see how if you didn't have that experience to draw from, it would just feel like it takes you out of it.
Yeah,
So
so and that's kind of how I feel. Is like I know the series has that like campiness to it, but I don't necessarily know like I it translates weirdly to a video game that I don't have any like cinematic attachment to. So it's like I feel like those kind of elements, like even though it feels good as an IP, it also feels weird as an IP for a video game still. Like in the
interesting.
campiness way. So yeah, I go back and forth on that, but.
Mission complete.
What else you been playing besides Indiana Jones?
Oh gosh.
last
Well,
thing about indie, are you gonna platinum it or like get the? Did
Oh
you
yeah,
get all the
so I've
achievements for
got
it?
most of the Xbox achievements. Like I said, there's just a few. There's an end game puzzle. I won't spoil it, but it's like an optional end game puzzle that basically requires you to get all the MacGuffins in the whole game and then solve this puzzle. I don't know if I can bring myself to do it. And if I do it, I might have to look at a guide because I've spent hours looking at this certain type of puzzle. I don't know if you've played in the Sukhothai area, those little puzzles where you put the ancient artifacts and you twist them and certain things pop
Oh,
out
yeah.
or don't pop out. It has to do with that. And it's like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do on this. So that could block me from finishing it. So we'll see. But no, other stuff that I'm playing, I kind of have these games that I kind of perpetually return to. So Aliens Fireteam Elite, I always go back to. I added recently Predator Hunting Grounds, which because that finally came to Xbox in the fall. It had been, a PlayStation exclusive for a while, and so got my Predator fill there. I also bought the Death Stranding, like I guess remaster that was
Okay.
released for Xbox. I love how cinematic it is. The gameplay hasn't grabbed me, which is pretty surprising. Like for as much as everybody loves that game so much, I am surprised because I feel like I was primed to love it, and the gameplay was just sort of okay so far to me.
That's perfectly in line of like how I feel about it too. I think like
Really? Okay.
cinematically, I think Death Stranding is really great. There's Hideo Kojima's story style didn't quite like stick well with me because I'm like, it almost feels like you're going to an art museum and you're expected to kind of like get your own meaning out of like all the art, like on the wall.
Yeah.
It sort of feels like that. It's like, hey, we have a story here. Now, what is your interpretation of the story versus like, I prefer more of the traditional narratives of like, hey, show me what story you want to be told, whether it's good or bad, let me decide. But I want to see what your story, a la like a God of War, like kind of like narrative is going to be. In Death Stranding, I feel like the story is is so abstract, and then like the game, I feel like is so walking simulator that I feel like you almost have to be in an extreme mindset to actually play the game. Like you have to be in that Death
Yes.
Stranding mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, no, what you're saying, it totally resonates because that almost walking sim element of it, it's like, and because it's so cinematic, it's like it doesn't really lend itself to like I'm gonna hop on for 15 minutes and just play. It's like,
No.
and if my kids are in the background, it's like. So I was a little disappointed with that. The other one that I just finished up recently is Still Wakes the Deep, which is also
Oh,
a
yeah.
walking simulator, but way more accessible to me for some reason. Like I really, really enjoyed Still Wakes the Deep. So that was one. I'm a big Alien Isolation fan. That's probably my all-time favorite survival horror game. So Still Wakes the Deep. It's similar concept, but it's out on a deep sea, oil rig that you delve too deeply and awaken, essentially the Kraken, and it's like
Yeah.
kind of have to survive. And it's really beautiful game too. The music, the story, and it's short and sweet. Like I like a good indie game that you can sit down and in 5-10 hours you're done. And so that one I can't recommend enough. That's a great one.
So, Still Wakes the Deep, I heard about it because it came out on Game Pass. I want to say around October-ish last year, like September, October-ish. But so it's also first person, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I got it off Game Pass. Same thing. I was like, I'll try that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like Still Wakes the Deep. How, as a person who's a chicken, so I'm like, I am like not a horror fan at all. How was the horror elements in it? Do you feel like it's light enough to where like, like it's not gonna scare the bejesus out of like someone who probably gets scared easily?
Oh man, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask him that because I'm obsessed with horror. I mean, like
Wow.
I watch films, I read horror books, I play horror games. So I will say Alien Isolation is the scariest game I've ever played. When I played that, within 2 hours, I literally threw up. Like I had so much tension. Because and I'm not the only person that's happened to. I mean, a lot of people have that experience with that game. So if that's like the ceiling, I would say this is nowhere near that. It felt very manageable. But having said that, it does have some creepy stuff to it. It's kind of that, unknowable horror of, like Lovecraftian kind of feel to it. But it definitely, I don't know. It's just, it didn't feel as scary. It felt just more engaging to me. So, I would say it's
Okay.
worth a try.
Okay, so like Still Wakes the Deep, and I hear that it can be beat within like 5 hours. Did you? Do
That
you
sounds
feel?
about right. I tried 100% everything, and I think about 5 hours.
Okay, okay. So like, is that what you're probably going to be playing for the foreseeable future? Is like Still Wakes the Deep, cleaning up some stuff on Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, I just finished Awakes the Deep, so that one I'll finish with. Indiana Jones I'll be cleaning up, and I actually just today purchased Terminator Resistance. I'm hoping it's good. Full disclosure, I'm obsessed with the Terminator Zero anime on Netflix. I was blown away by it. And I was like, okay, I gotta find me a Terminator game. So I got an Xbox, I saw that one, and it seemed to have some very passionate fans. I've only, I like just got it this afternoon, and I've only played a little bit of it, and so far it looks okay. The controls feel a little sluggish to me, so I'm hoping it's not a regret purchase, but we'll see.
I'm starting to get this impression that if it like all these 80 franchises, you sort of want to play these
Yeah.
games, like
Guilty.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I know Indiana Jones isn't quite all in the 80s, but like it's like Indiana Jones, you got Alien, you got Terminator. I wouldn't be surprised.
Predator. Yeah.
The Predator, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to hear you play RoboCop next.
I thought about it. I looked at that one in the stores.
It's actually not. It's actually
Guilty
not
as
bad.
charged.
It's
Okay.
actually not bad. I would probably say it's like a 7 out of 10 video game, but it's like a fun time. As long as you go
Okay.
into it with like managed expectations, I think you'll have a good time with RoboCop.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I heard that too, and it was kind of, if I hadn't just watched that anime, I probably would have gotten RoboCop instead of Terminator. But I thought, well, I got to give this a try. So other things that I've got coming up, like very soon, almost the playing now. I'm hopefully going to be getting a review code for Alien Rogue Incursion for MetaQuest 3. It's already out for PlayStation VR, but they had to delay their MetaQuest 3 launch because it's just such a different platform. So I'm hoping like end of January, like sometime in the next week or two, I'll be getting that and getting an early start for the February release, which that's the game that I bought the MetaQuest 3 for.
Wow.
Like Alien VR, like holding my pulse rifle, holding the motion sensor, like, oh man, you could have charged me $1,000 for that. So I'm hoping that one doesn't disappoint. So that's probably it. And then like on the horizon, like other current games that are already released on Switch, I'm going to be playing FNAF Into the Pit. My kiddo really likes FNAF, so Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit, and also I guess this one's actually one that's coming out soon, but Secret of the Mimic, another FNAF VR game that was actually at PAX. And then also my daughter really wants me to try Birth on Switch, which is like a cozy puzzle game, which looks kind of fun. It's a very chill game, so that's probably it. So that's like a full plate here for a bit.
That's fun. That's fun. So like, okay, so you bought a MetaQuest mostly for Alien, mostly for Alien. Yeah. How did you feel about Romulus? Like Alien Romulus?
Boy, it's interesting. So when I saw it in theaters, I went like 3 times and I loved it. Since then, I watched it on home release and it hasn't aged quite as well as I would have liked by my 3rd or 4th viewing. I can definitely feel the retread aspect that a lot of people didn't like.
Mhm.
But in terms of like, I think, handling such a important IP, I actually think Disney and 20th Century Studios did a great job with it. And I think they kind of needed a film to remind people why they like Alien. And then my hope is that Fede Alvarez's follow-up sequel, which he's working on now, will be fresh territory. And I think that kind of sums up how I feel about it. Like I was thrilled about the return to practical effects because, maybe that's again because of my love of 80s stuff, but I just think practical effects are king. And so I was really excited about that. I hope they win an Academy Award for it. I saw that they're on the short list for some of that, but it'll probably go to some other films. But hey, yeah. So I think it's good, and I did really well. And there's kind of like rumblings of maybe getting an Alien versus Predator film. With
Again, huh?
Yeah, because Prey did so well, and oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the director's name. Shoot. Well, anyway, he did a fantastic job with that, and he and Fede Alvarez are thinking about working together. So at least they joked about it. So we'll see.
Yeah, so I gotta ask though, you being such a '80s savant as you are you excited about like Karate Kid as well?
You know, it's funny. I really enjoyed Karate Kid growing up. As an adult, it hasn't grabbed me, and I didn't watch the Netflix sort of spinoff either.
You didn't watch Cobra Kai?
No,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't, which it's funny because I feel like I'm like the target audience for that. But I think for me, as far as that nostalgia factor growing up.
Okay, okay. I like that. I like that. So I I want to ask you this. So like one game that I think like I should have prepared you for this, but I forgot. I've legitimately thought about this question just now. It's like you being a Zelda fan. I wanted to get your impression on it. It feel like Echoes of Wisdom might have been like the first Zelda game I've ever seen just come and go.
Mhm.
Normally Zelda games kind of have this like zeitgeist moment in the ether, so to speak, to where like the world almost stops when a Zelda game comes around. And this one is the first one where it's like I didn't necessarily see like Twilight Princess. I saw a lot of people like buck because of the motions. Like there's always either something to
Mhm.
talk about, but or for good or for bad. This one was like the first Zelda game I've ever seen to where it was just like it's good, and then the world moved on. Like, how did you
Mhm.
feel about Echoes of Wisdom? And do you feel like this game, for better or for worse, was different and just didn't resonate with people as much?
No, I actually think it did. I think it's a little bit misleading. Because I think so much of the current Zelda fan base are people
Uh,
whose history with Zelda goes back to Breath of the Wild. So it's like there's no pre-Zelda for many of them, and so I think this was their real. I mean, I know we had Link's Awakening in 2017, but for most people, this was their first experience in a top-down Zelda, and I think that sort of staying factor, like I think a lot of people picked it up, had fun, and then they went back to Tears of the Kingdom. Like if that's their Zelda thing. Whereas I think for folks like myself who've been playing Zelda since the '80s, this game there were passionate fans about it, and I think like gaming at large. Maybe it didn't capture people's attention because they're really associating Zelda more now with that open they like to call it open air rather than open world experience. For diehard lifelong Zelda fans, Echoes of Wisdom is up there as some of my favorite Zelda games.
wow.
I played the original Zelda when I was a kid. I didn't play Zelda 2 very much because I just didn't get it. I've appreciated it as an adult now, but the game that absolutely just is in my bones as a Zelda fan is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on yes. That's the game that made me fall in love with the genre and video games. And so a return to that Hyrule from A Link to the Past and all the Easter eggs in there, getting to play Echoes of Wisdom was like a dream come true. And then adding in that Tears of the Breath of the Wild ability for players to solve problems with their own methods. It was like the best of all things Zelda wrapped up into one game. So I think it's just the nature of a top-down game. It's not going to stick around for a lot of folks the same way a big 3D adventure would. But I do think that because I'm in a lot of like Zelda fan groups and stuff on social media just to kind of follow the conversation, and it's still it's still a mainstay there, and people are still talking
Okay,
about it. And yeah, so
so that's
that's
good.
my 2 cents on that. Yeah.
That's good. I think what I said was probably like a little bit like more misleading than the actual nature of the beast was, because like it just I don't know, it was like around that time, last year, I think Astrobot sort of took a little glaze there too, to where I'm like Astrobot was sort of the most Nintendo game that came out last year, but it wasn't done by
Yes.
Nintendo, and it was sort of a weird little like thing there, to where I'm like, I obviously Echoes of Wisdom reviewed very well as well. I think it's like sitting at a meta of like 82, 83, or 84, but like,
Mhm.
so I'm like, it was just one of those things that I found weird, because like you kind of said, it was the first my intro into the series was Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So I'm one of those people you're talking about here,
Mhm.
but I was like, hearing it on Twitter and all that kind of stuff, it was like I was expecting it to be like one of those things where I saw clips of it for like ever, and it's
Yeah.
just when that didn't happen, I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. But maybe I've been spoiled by the Breath of the Wilds, the Tears of the
Right.
Kingdoms,
Yeah, I mean, your first two experiences are like, engineering marvels in video games. I mean, like each of those games did something, profound, and so I think Zelda games often have that kind of impact. But I do think Tears of the Kingdom will impact the industry in ways that will be more subtle, but will stick around. Having that like immersive top-down environment, but that you can still use items within the world to climb over objects or interact with things like that. Like I think, we're seeing all these 2D remasters of games, and I would not be surprised at all if we see some of the game design elements that Nintendo introduced with Echoes of Wisdom bleed into some of these 2D remasters that we're going to see come out, So yeah, I think it has a chance to be impactful, but 3D Zelda is always going to be king over 2D. And so, yeah, I see what you're saying for sure.
It's like, yeah, and I get what you're saying too, because I do think like the impression that like the 3D Zeldas have left is already resonating. I think there's a game called Eternal Strand. It's coming out like in a month and a half. It is. You look at that game, and the first thing you think of is like, oh, this is Zelda. Like this is Zelda, but it is. It's like it is almost like. Yeah, it has like you can climb everything. It has like the same sort of health bars over bosses as like Zelda when you run into like a golem in the wild, or when you run into like the 3-headed dragon. I can't remember the name now, but
Yeah.
it's like it has. Yeah, thank you. So I'm like, it has Eternal Strand is like it has a lot of DNA into it, but then it mixes it in with kind of like some. Okay, yeah. So like Eternal Strand, we're seeing a little bit of like Zelda DNA in that game. It is very like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom like, but it sort of has like almost like an Assassin's Creed like RPG meets Zelda, and with a whole bunch of customization options on top of that. So it's like I think we're already starting to see that DNA out there in the wild. I want to ask you though, like you bought a MetaQuest 3, and this is kind of transitioning into that the main topic, but I want to ask you, like, do you feel like what other investments do you feel like you're going to make in gaming this year, as far as like hardware or controllers or anything like that?
Well, I mean, it probably goes without saying, but when Switch 2 arrives, I'll be like the old days. I'll be camping out overnight at, Target or whatever. I'll do what I can to get my hands on that. I've been a lifelong consumer of Nintendo products, and gosh, I can't wait. I still have my launch Switch. Actually, it's still running strong with no problems. No breakdown of the fan, no overheating. It's, and I love it. But I'm ready for the next generation of Nintendo. I'm curious. I'm sure it'll probably be largely like the iPhone model, like, people talk about, each, there's not much difference between the iterations, but Nintendo still always has some element that's changing the game in some way, so whether it's
weird gimmick, the weird gimmick of Nintendo.
But I can't imagine that they're going to completely let that go, so obviously there's all these leaks and who knows how accurate they are, but even just the idea of being able to use a mouse on the Switch is sort of interesting with the Joy-Cons. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, where you can actually put it face down, the spine down. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like it'll be interesting to see what the new Switch is capable of. So that's something that I'll be investing in. I'm just getting used to the world of VR, but gosh, it's I played a lot of like the demo stuff they have on MetaQuest 3, and we did have a MetaQuest 2 that mostly my kids use now, but like that has a lot of potential that I'm really curious about. So I'll maybe some accessories for that, and I keep seeing rumors of next gen Xbox at some point. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I don't know how the company's surviving off seemingly no sales, but
yeah.
Who knows? Maybe if I can get a deal on a PlayStation 5, because I know that's a list of, content exclusive titles that I haven't gotten to play much of. So I am curious about the world of PlayStation. But, as with any gamer, money's always a factor.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I want to ask you this. Like, you are a person who had the MetaQuest 2 and then you upgraded to the MetaQuest 3. What was the driving force, other than aliens, that is, like, to actually dive deeper into VR? Do you feel like, because I'm like on the PSVR2 side, I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of people are kind of spurred and burned right now because they feel like
Mhm.
PlayStation hasn't necessarily supported that ecosystem, and thus they feel like they kind of overspent for a device that only has a not a lengthy amount of software attached to it. But on the MetaQuest side, it is very open. So I'm like, what made you wanted to dive deeper into that?
Yeah, it's just a unique experience. I played Resident Evil 4 on the MetaQuest 2, and the headset is so heavy that I would get kind of motion sickness like after playing for 30 minutes, and so I kind of had to play it in chunks. But just that feeling of being inside some of these beloved franchises and truly fully immersing yourself in it, it's kind of like if it could be done well, it could be a pinnacle gaming experience. Like I really believe that. And I think we're so early in the usage of the hardware that I think it's going to get a lot better. And I'm curious how much like the advancement of AI, as much as that's causing so many, problems in the artistic community, if that's going to just sort of accelerate the ways that we can use, VR. To be honest, I'm just really curious about it. So far, I'll say like the MetaQuest 3 headset, I haven't gotten motion sickness once. Like, and I'm
Wow.
somebody who's pretty sensitive to that kind of thing. Like, I don't
Mhm.
usually do well, but it's just lighter. The weight distribution is different. If you've worn a VR headset, but sometimes like it puts pressure points on certain parts of your head with the
Yeah.
way it's held on, and that hasn't been an issue with MetaQuest 3. That made me really excited. And then, like I said, I love survival horror. So, and I love 80s, aliens films. So like the idea of, getting to go to, like an infestation colony and sort of survive and fight my way out. Like, it's like this ascendant video game experience that, being a kid, I grew up watching Star Trek, and so Star Trek,
Live
there's
longer,
the
prosper.
holodeck, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I always just think like, man, I wonder if I'm going to live long enough to get to like try a holodeck someday. That would be so cool, and I had to like to be in like an aliens game. I was like, I can't even conceptualize how we would, have that kind of technological advancement in my lifetime. And it's like, you know, like the MetaQuest 3 especially with like you can augment reality because it's got the cameras on the outside
Mhm.
now. So it's like there are certain games where like, the monsters will be in your house. And so it's like, I don't know, it feels like we're getting so close
Yeah.
to that, experience. And I know we're still a ways off, but that has me so curious. And I wonder if it can get to a point where the technology is cheap enough, the physiological effects on people aren't adverse, like that everybody can use it without getting sick or feeling like they can't do it. Or, particularly one of the areas they still need to improve on is the accessibility, so like some games you
Yeah.
can play sitting, but then you're like making these big jumps in, when you're moving. And it's like, when all that gets straightened out, like, who knows, maybe VR is going to be like a force to be reckoned with on the gaming space. It's not right now, but it has me curious. Yeah. So I guess that's like a long answer to say, like, I kind of wanted to get in now and to have some history with it so I can write about it professionally. And, yeah.
So, like you being a horror fan and also like an early adopter in VR now, like, I've always wondered because that seems like the perfect genre for VR. Like that feels
Yeah.
like it really does. It feels like the perfect genre, like it feels like a marriage that's just naturally there. It's like I know horror games have, historically like been the best sellers in video game history, but like
Right.
it seems like that's something to where like it really can find a niche and get like really ingratiated in a lot of fans and then like evolve outward from there. Like I look at a game like I don't know if you heard of it, Mouthwashing, that came out like
Actually, it's funny. Right before we started here, one of my writers wrote a review for that game, and I'm editing their piece. So
what?
literally, like half hour ago, I was sitting in a game
Mhm.
review reading over that game. So that's funny.
Yeah, it's like that feels so VR like to me. Like not it feels like a game that would be both would play well on both platforms, but it's one of those things to where I'm like that type of game could like really soar in VR. Like I look at that, I look at like Choo Choo Charles and other like
Mhm.
smaller indie games that have really taken off because they've gained a huge like a pretty solid following, like in that horror genre space, and it feels like V has titles that attract people to it. Obviously, it has Aliens. Obviously, it has Half-Life Alyx, Assure's
And
Wrath.
game.
Yeah, the Batman game that really Arkham. What was that? What was Arkham Shadows?
Active Shadows. Yep.
Arkham Shadows, which just came recently. So I feel like it's starting to grow that library, but I also feel like it's like there's such a huge gap that's missing to where I'm like, I want to see the library fleshed out a little bit more, and I think you'll have a lot more like adopters there.
Yeah, and there needs to be a little bit more continuity between the systems. I mean,
Oh,
in a
that's
lot
true.
of ways now, like I know, fanboys might object to this, but like essentially you're getting the same experience between a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox Series X, right? Like the hardware is roughly equivalent. You're going to have your personal
Yeah.
preferences for branding, but like in VR, it's not really the case, right? Like there are like huge variations between consoles, and like I'll take this Alien Rogue Incursion thing right now. Survios, which is a dedicated VR developer, like they don't do anything else but VR. They were able to release it on PlayStation VR 2, but they've had to wait months to try and get it to work for MetaQuest 3 because it's such a hard platform to like. It's not like you can just design a game and then just distribute it, right? And so that has to get better for the technology where developers feel like they can approach and say, like, I would love to make games for VR, and it's not going to be a huge pain in the butt to try and make my game work for every iteration of VR,
Yeah.
and particularly for indie developers to be able to feel free to do that. That's when I think it could really start to take off.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I don't want to hold you too much longer, but I want to ask you one major question, and this question is going to be basically the game episode of our show. So it's not going to be trivia this time. So I want to ask you something based on something you said earlier because I like this. I really do. So you're going to be a very early adopter on the Switch too. You're going to get that thing as soon as it launches.
Oh yeah.
David's dream lineup for the Switch 2, if you had these rules attached to it, you could pick out any dream lineup you want with any IP that you want from Nintendo portfolio. But you can only choose 3 first-party games. So 3 natural Nintendo first-party games and then 2 third-party games. So you get 5 games that would be like David's dream launch library for the Nintendo Switch 2, but you only get 3 launch Nintendo platform games. So Nintendo first party, 2 third party. What would it be?
Ooh, that is such a good question, particularly the non first party games. That's an interesting one. Well, just thinking about sales, thinking about what has made me love Nintendo over the years, ideally, Nintendo's going to have a Mario Kart on there. I mean, that's got to be number one, right? Like a Mario Kart 9.
It's been over a decade that we've been playing the same Mario Kart.
I mean, the question with that, like, what do you do when you've made the perfect game? Like, and
That's true.
It is the perfect game. I mean, I know they can do more courses and whatnot, but that like expansion pack gave us a lot of like 16 new racetracks that were awesome, So it was like, but I think that's, if I'm in charge of Nintendo for a day, I'm saying like we got to start with Mario Kart 9.
Okay.
This one may not draw as many in as a Mario Kart, but I think it's another like resume builder, and for people that love it, they're gonna love it, and that is the next Smash Bros game.
Okay, so you're going party all the way right now.
I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love story too, but like over the years, some of my best memories with Nintendo are like being in my college dorm, screaming at my roommates because they blue shelled me, or like Smash, fight went to the last second. I mean, those are the things that make Nintendo come alive for me in a way that other platforms, Nintendo just does party games so well, right? That's part of their branding. So it's like, I feel like those two, and then you've got to get a good story one. As much as I love Metroid, and, I think Metroid Prime 4 is probably an obvious launch title, it doesn't get enough people in, so
yeah,
like,
for sure.
I think the next Mario Odyssey's probably got to be it. I would say, I mean, if Nintendo wants to shock us all and drop a new 3D Zelda, I'm all in. Like that would be great. But that's probably not happening, right? I mean, we've got enough recent Zelda that can hold me over. show us what you can do with a new 3D Mario game, on a new console. What outside the box stuff can you include in the new Mario game? I don't know. Is there like a Mario Paint portion of it, with the little mouse, because like, I don't know, like surprise me. So I think those three would be a great, launch. And then
This is your dream launch, though. What would you, so like would
I mean,
Smash Kart?
those consumer of those two, so it's like,
Okay.
it's kind of like what I say it's my dream. I mean, I also really, I'm a fanboy. Like, I want Nintendo to do well. So it's like, it will bring me happiness if Switch 2 does great. Because I don't think it's a given. There's a lot of, skepticism out there right now that if Nintendo's truly just doing like an iterative console, like now with all these other handhelds on the market, like, are they going to be able to separate themselves from the competition? I still think they will, because I think Nintendo's library is king.
Yeah, for sure.
So so for me, like that is my dream.
Okay,
but
so we got
honestly,
a 3D Mario, we have a Smash Brothers, and we have a kart game. So I think that's a strong line. Like all those are hot sellers. So what's the 2 third-party games that you would associate with the launch?
I'm curious, what are my limits here? But like, I've always been a little jealous of the Final Fantasy remaster games on PlayStation.
Wow,
like,
so you're taking exclusives.
I mean, if I can, like, there's this sort of like, hey, the console wars are over, and we kind of are sharing. I mean, Master Chief is supposed to end up on PlayStation soon, right? Like,
I mean, Xbox is the only one sharing. If we're being honest, Xbox is the only one sharing.
You're asking my dream. I'm going outside the box for this one.
Okay.
Give me Rebirth, or something like that. In the spirit of collaboration. Otherwise, gosh, like, honestly, I would love a new like Capcom Mega Man game. I think that would be kind of fun. I played those games as a kid, and I feel like those are sort of, they definitely still have their passionate fan bases, but it's been a long time since we've had like a really great Mega Man game. Yeah, something like that. That would be, those two would work for me.
I'm right there with you. So far, the only thing I think I would change from your list is like, because I'm right there with you. Like, I think you do a 3D Mario, and I think a lot of people are going to be happy about that one. I think Mario Kart is very likely. Sakurai acts like he doesn't like Smash anymore. Like, he doesn't want to do Smash anymore. So I would probably say, if I'm being realistic here, I would probably say the successor to 1-2 Switch is probably going to be the likelier candidate. But like, my dream would be like a sequel to Fire Emblem 3 Houses to like .2. That would probably be my like dream to slot into there. But on the third party side, I think of like what would get people the most hyped to see on the Switch 2. Like, say you wake up tomorrow and they show you a trailer of the Switch 2, and they show you all 3 games that you're already excited about, and then what else is people going to get like super excited about to see? I would probably say Elden Ring. Seeing Elden Ring on the Switch 2 would be massive. And I'm gonna say this is an older game now, but like, I think people would lose their minds to see like Red Dead Redemption 2 on the Switch.
Oh yeah,
too.
that's a great choice. Well, you got me with the Elden Ring one, because that probably, the Elden Ring DLC was probably my favorite game of 2024.
Wow.
If I can count it as a game. I'm a huge Elden Ring fan, and beating that DLC was maybe my greatest video game accomplishment ever, because I beat it before it got nerfed, and like, I've never died so many times facing a final boss. Yeah, it would be great for Nintendo to get a title like that. I think, and I actually, like,
I think it's a realistic possibility.
Yeah, I really do. I think you're right about that. That's one I hadn't really thought about. Probably a lot more likely than Final Fantasy. So.
Yeah, I think like here's why I think it's like, I'm partially one of those skeptics you talked about earlier, because like, I think I've gotten so used to the Steam Deck and all those different things. It's like, I do also wonder, and it's almost like a challenge for me. Like, I want to see a challenge to Nintendo there, because I want to see them bring it in a new generation where like, you don't have the Wii U library to fall back on for half of it.
Right.
Like, I do, like, I'm giving them all the credit. They put out fantastic games during the Switch generation, but I was also like, a lot of those were Wii U ports or 3DS ports. And I'm like, I want to see what the library looks like without the 3DS ports, without the Wii U ports, and like, to see you on par with like a PS4 Pro or PS4 or like a Xbox, you know, Xbox is like X, not the One X, not the Series X, but like see you on par with those consoles, and I want to see you cook. Like I want to see what you can do because I think a lot of their potential has been it has they've actually put out a lot of their potential, but I feel like some of it's like ports a lot of the time. So I want to see that potential realized in a lot of other titles too. So I'm curious, but what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, if you're tired of the Wii U ports, don't worry. They've been saving the GameCube ports.
Oh no!
Wait for a Wind Waker HD and
Oh no!
Princess HD to finally come on there. They'll sell, 20 million copies. But
Yeah.
jokes aside, I do think you're right. I would like to see them, really do something special. One we didn't mention that I actually, while you were talking, I thought of too that I could see Nintendo doing is a new Xenoblade game.
Oh yeah, it's been a while.
I could see them.
It's been a while, yeah. So I think that's realistic as well. So David, thank you so much for doing this, man. I had a blast talking to you tonight.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
All right, so serious this time. One last question. I like to ask this of all the guests before they leave. Give everyone your single player video game recommendation before you go, please. Just one game that you would. Yeah, I like to ask you on the spot because I wanted to be like, one of those games you can say like.
Can it be retro or does it have to be?
Yeah, it could be retro as long as it's a single player game.
Yeah, I mean, man, I hate to be a broken record, but if you've never played Alien Isolation in your life, it is probably my favorite single player game of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, and just because the creature AI is so fantastic, admittedly it's terrifying, but it's terrifying because it's so well made, and it's been over 10 years and the game still plays like a brand new game that could have been released in 2025. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but one of the things that made it really unique at the time, and really honestly still to this day, is the creature will adapt to your behavior. So if you hide in lockers too long, it'll start realizing that you're not under the tables where it's looking, you're not down the hall, so it'll start opening all the lockers to come find you.
Oh, God, that's scary.
So over time, like over the game, the monster that you're facing isn't the same monster that you face in the beginning of the game because it's learned your behavior over the course of an entire game. And so it truly feels like you're being hunted the entire game, and no single playthrough through Alien Isolation is the same because every time you play it, you know where things are, your strategy has changed, so the creature has changed. And a little known fact too, at the time, if you had an Xbox Kinect,
it would hear you. No.
Yeah, it would hear you. So like if you turn that on, like if you whispered too loud or there was a noise in the background, like the creature would come tear it after you and find you. So there's these parts where you have to hold your breath in a locker so that you're not detected, and you really have to hold your breath in real life.
No.
Yeah, and it's just a really great story too. Even if you're not a fan of Alien, it's just a really engaging story. It's, this young woman is out looking for her mother, and her mother's Ellen Ripley from the films, but it doesn't really even matter if you've seen the films. Like, she just wants to know what happened to her mom and why her mom never came home. And it's this compelling story of, as she goes out looking for her mom, she runs into greedy corporations and monsters, and, becomes this thing of survival. It's probably the most enthralling, gripping single player game I've ever played. I love it. So,
someone like, it's funny enough you mentioned that, and like about like when you were describing the game, someone else recently described a game that is like that takes a lot of those mechanics. I copied a lot of those, and it's the Quiet Place game that just came out recently.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I was fascinated when they told me about like, if it hears you, like if you have like microphones or your controller mic on, and it's like it's a wrap, it's a wrap for you in that game. And I'm like, snap! It's cool to see like where that innovation came from, because I didn't know like people were already doing that. So that sounds scary though.
Yeah, and even as games have tried to sort of mimic that, I don't know what sort of like proprietary programming they had for the creature AI, but even today it's pretty widely accepted that element of it has never been reproduced.
Okay, that's good.
Even games today still have not been able to mimic how much this like antagonist learns from you. So, I don't know. I'd like to see them share that because I'd like to see it in more games, to be honest. But the sound, thing, yeah, that has been, adopted in other games since. So, but yeah, I haven't played that Quiet Place one yet. I should check that out.
You described it so vividly. I'm gonna have to watch cartoons before bed tonight. So thank you for that. So everybody, thank you for listening to another episode of the Single Player Experience Podcast. I've been Sebastian Mauldin. This has been David Lazby. David, before we go, where can the good people find you?
Anywhere on bossrush.net, which is our main video game and entertainment journalism website. Also at David Lazby on X. And yeah, thanks for having me.
And everyone be on the lookout because the bossies are here. It's award season time in video games, and Boss Rush is doing the bossies where they're giving out some amazing awards across the board. I believe it's over 30 categories this year, right?
That's right. And it's debuts, I think, at 9 o'clock Eastern on January 16th. So,
all right, everybody. So I've been Sebastian. This has been David Lazby. This has been the Single Player Experience, the best place for single player gamers to hear and find out about good single player games they need to be playing. In the meanwhile, stay safe, stay gaming, and until next time, enjoy that single player experience. Bye, everybody.
Yeah. It's a single player experience. Sebastian on the mic, we keep it fun and delirious. Talking about the games we love, the ones that make you smile. From the classics to the new drops, we running them out. Indie gems on the rise, big titles in the mix. Ranking all the legends, see who really getting picked. Gaming news, reviews, and debates we discuss. From PlayStation to Xbox, it's the culture we trust. On the Steam Deck, I'm moving, playing on the go. PlayStation be the wave, Xbox steady with the flow. But the Switch, we respected those exclusive shine bright. Still don't play it much, but Zelda and Mario are tight. Sebastian got the right single player in his soul. He's got you playing games that'll make you lose control. From The Last of Us to Cyberpunk, we vibe. Getting lost in these worlds, man, we're feeling so alive. So listen up, we break it down every week. Game and debates, no holds barred, we speak. Single player experience, it's more than just play. It's where we talk about games and vibe in every way. Let's get it. Single player experience, Sebastian got the helms. Talking all the sagas from the kingdoms to realms. Day one with the console spawn point for your news. Tune in to this podcast for rankings and reviews. Hey, it's a single player experience, we on that grind. Sebastian on the mic, got that game on his mind. Racing on that GTA 4 so we never fall behind. On that Red Dead Redemption, we outlaws by design. We got that EA mindset, y'all, it's in the game. On that GTA hard, swinging lane to lane. All W's all day on Hall of Fame. NBA 2K, just one more turn. Civilization got me playing all day. When there's like Luffy, I'm a warrior in the sea. The Last of Us, Ellie and Joel, pulling my heartstrings. Got that persona mentality, all is not what it seems. Playing Kojima games, wondering what does this even mean. Single player experience, Sebastian got the helms. Talking all the sagas from the kingdoms to realms. Day one with the console spawn point for your news. Tune in to this podcast for rankings and reviews. Got a royal cradle swinging that ass. On that Ballatro hard, always bet on the blast. Halo on the Xbox, Master Chief, we making the attack. With that retro gaming vibe, always running it back. Batman in the shadows, we fight for the night. From Night City, Cyberpunk to college football highlights. We got the Steam Deck rolling, always ready to play. From Hades to Yakuza, we out here all day. I'm on the PlayStation 5, got the power in my hands. Xbox Series X, that's where the future stands. Nintendo Switch, what's wrong with you fans? Steam Deck rolling everywhere in demand. Single player experience, Sebastian got the helms. Talking all the sagas from the kingdoms to realms. Day one with the console spawn point for your news. Tune in to this podcast for rankings and reviews. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. Let's get it.